cloud here so that we have it. I always go back to this, and we haven't done this in a while, and I know we've talked about it probably in the shift class or the MREA class. And if you went to Brandon Green's class yesterday, the alchemy of money, one of the things that whether it's him or Tony Robbins, Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman, I mean, you name any of those people that are out there that have books out there and they've talked about this, is you have to know where your money's at, number one. Before you can invest it into something, you got to know what you got. You got to know what you have. And we need to make sure that we have some type of a budget, some type of a P&L, if you want to call it that. And again, he gave us all the resources to do that. He shared those with us yesterday. And if people need them, they can reach out, and I'll give you the code, if you want to call it that. He gave us, you can text him and text him a code, and then it just automatically gets emailed to you. He's going to ask you for some information, of course. But, you know, one of the things that when we talk about budgets, of course, everybody's eyes kind of glaze over and roll in the back of their head, right? Because it's not sexy. It's not fun. It's not any of those things. But again, like Dave Ramsey said, and I think he mentioned it yesterday, Brandon mentioned it yesterday too, is that if you don't tell your money where to go, it just kind of goes wherever it wants. So the image that works well for me that they've mentioned before in the past is that if you took a cup of water and you poured it on the table, where does the water go? It goes wherever it wants to go. But if you take that water and you keep it in the glass, or keep it in a cup, and you put it in a bowl, or you put it in whatever, it'll take the shape of that. And so your money does the same thing, is that if you're not telling your money where to go and what to do, it just kind of leaks out onto the table and basically runs off the edge of the table. And then, of course, at the end of the month, we're like, where's all the money at? And that's why it's important to visit your money, as they say, and to find out what's happening with it. So I challenge, number one, anybody who's watching today and listening, that you get out and you do that budget. You know, sit down and figure out, all right, here's my mortgage payment, here's my car payment, this is what I pay on insurance. Figure out what it is. And I think, again, Brandon mentioned this as well, to do exactly what you need to do. To figure out exactly how much you need to live. All right. Number one, that's the first thing that you need to do, is how much money do I need to live? What's my payment going to be? My mortgage payment, what's my car payment? What's my insurance? How much is groceries going to be? And that was one of the things that he found yesterday, speaking of groceries, and he talked about it being his blueberry. But the fact of the matter is that all of a sudden he was spending $250 a week on groceries. And of course, they had hired somebody to basically do the shopping for him, because first of all, they hated it. And he had made the statement to the person that was doing it that I wanted fresh blueberries all the time. But of course, in the wintertime, blueberries go up because they're not as common as they are in the summertime or the spring. And then on top of it, he was taking these blueberries and he was freezing them and putting them in his freezer. And so the person who was buying them just kept buying more and more and more, and he kept freezing them, and they're buying these really expensive blueberries because they're fresh blueberries. And then he found out that, I can buy frozen blueberries for less. And his point being is, what are your blueberries? And one of the things that I came up with for me is, and I think a lot of people, is like the streaming services, right? We had cable, we'll call it that, or we had DirecTV or whatever it was that we had. And of course, they would always constantly creep up in price, right? Next thing you know, you were paying $120 or $130 a month because everything had went up a little bit. You'd call them up and say, hey, I want to cancel. And then they'd go, you know what, we'll give it to you for $70. And you'd be like, yeah, okay, I'll keep it then. And so that goes back and forth, right? Well, then this big thing with the streaming services came along, and we had the whole commercial about cut the cable, right? and you could get Netflix for it was less than $10. I think it was even $5.95 at one time. You know, you could get Disney and ESPN and Hulu Plus for, you know, like $9.99, and you could get, you know, all these different things, Sling TV, you know, for $35.95. And the fact of the matter is they've all done price creep, right? I think that if I remember correctly, I think Netflix is now around $21, right? I think that that Disney Channel with what they've got offered is somewhere in that same neighborhood of about $20. I've got YouTube TV is what I use at this point. I think they're around 65. You know, so you start adding all that up, and heck, I'm paying more than I was paying before, but because each one is separate, we don't look at it. And so what else could I do with that money, right? And the second part of that, and as a matter of fact, I just ordered lunch. That's my other blueberry, like he talked about, is eating out all the time. Because let's just be honest, at this point, it's a $20 bill just to eat out. I mean, I don't care where you go, what you do, how you try to get less. I mean, it's going to be $10 to $13, let's say $10 to $15 just for the food. And of course, then you got to leave a tip. So you're going to be around that $18 to $20. Well, if that's $20 a day, you know, times, you know, 5, that's, you know, $100 a week, that's $400 a month, that's $4,800 in a year. Ouch, right? That doesn't include doing anything else that I'm doing, whatever stuff that's just for lunch. If I'm doing that at home on top of that, I mean, we're talking over $5,000 easily, right? It's probably closer to 8 or 9. And so it gets you thinking, because again, they want us to think that, it's just $10. Don't worry about it. You know, and I'm not picking on them, you know, make sure I make this statement here, but Planet Fitness, as an example, $10 a month, right? No big deal. Who cares if I use it or not? If I use it one time, I got my money's worth, you know, and that was one of the things that Brandon talked about yesterday too, was, you know, when we're buying things and we're using things, that's the mindset that we tend to have. Or because we're in sales in particular, what we tell ourselves is, I just got to sell one house. If I just sell one house, I've paid for that. Now that's on the business side of things. If we're buying leads, or we're using some type of a lead source, or, you know, we're using somebody that's putting out social media for us, or we're paying somebody to do something for us, that's the mindset that we tend to get, is I just got to do one deal and it's paid for. Well, you know, once you take out taxes, and once you take out, you know, your cost of sales, and you start taking that stuff out, you're like, oh crap, I need to sell 2. And so now you've done 2 deals where you're not getting any money out of it. So you work for free, really, for 2 deals. You know, so we have to be really careful with that mentality, and just really have a good relationship with our money and with the numbers that are around the money as well. And again, there's no judgment. I think that's the thing that people get into, is that, oh my goodness, if I sit down with Brian, if I sit down with a financial counselor or whoever it is, if I sit down with anybody, if I sit down with my coach and we start going through the numbers, they're going to judge me. No, they've probably seen a lot worse. And on top of it, they probably went through it themselves, because most people who are coaching it have actually been through it and have done it. You know, so again, the first part of, you know, again, we're doing Wealth Building Wednesday, but that first part has to be, what are you doing with your money? You got to figure out where it's going, what it's doing, because until you do that, how much money do you have to invest? You don't know, right? Because you're not doing that. The second part of it is that all right, if I go through and you know, I put everything on a sheet or a spreadsheet, or heck, there's, I don't know how many different probably free apps that are out there that you can, if you go to Win Make Give, I know they've got one, winmakegive.com, you can get into their stuff and you can get a free one. But figuring that out, figuring out how much your net worth is, you know, moving forward, again, if you're looking to invest, you know, do you own a home, and do you have equity in it? You know, is it something that you could possibly take some of that money out to go and invest? Is that something that you want to do? But until you know And you might be sitting here going, oh, well, my house is worth, yeah, I'm just going to guesstimate. Go out, get the numbers, sit down and do it. Again, and that's the other part of it too, is figure out how much net worth you have. You may have more than what you think you do. You know, you got yourself a car, and you got yourself a house, and you got yourself some jewelry, and maybe you got some weapons, we'll call them that, or maybe you have a horse. I mean, because a horse is an asset, right? It's worth something. And so, you know, what can I sell it for? Do I owe money on it? I mean, it's not a liquid asset, but it's still an asset, just like a house is. So putting those all down on a piece of paper and figuring out what I've got and where I want to go, because you got to figure out where you're at, so that, and then you can punch into the GPS where you want to go. And then at that point, then too, what do you want to invest in? You know, do you want to invest in real estate? Do you want to invest in precious metals, you know, gold, silver, things along those lines? Do you want to get into bonds, stocks? You know, what is it that you want to look at? You want to do one of those fund sourcing things and get involved with that. And then you can figure out how much money you got, because let's say, you know what, I'd like to buy real estate, but I need to have, if you're going to buy a $200,000 house right now, you're probably going to need to have $50,000. They're going to ask for 25%, 20 to 25%. So 40 to 50,000 in cash. If you don't have that, let's say I've got 5,000 in cash, or maybe even 10,000, I can go do like Fundrise. I can go there and take that money and put it in there and earn, you know, 5, 6, 7% on my money. You know, so there's different things then you can look at. But you got to know what you got. And on top of it, then you've got to be a steward of your money again, because where's it going? And then visit that budget. You know, that's one of the things that early on that we did the Dave Ramsey thing, you know, like our grocery bill, you know, was kind of running, because what do you do when you go to the grocery store? If you don't have a list and you're walking through the grocery store, and as a matter of fact, I did it last night. I'm going in there to get, I think it was some milk, and what else was I getting? It was only going to be like 2 or 3 things, but I ended up walking out with like 6 bags worth of stuff, 6 or 8, because I was walking along. I was like, oh, I could use that, and oh, I can grab that, and I'll take that. And so, you know, you blow the budget, right? Now, and granted, I was buying food instead of going out and eating, so that's the good part. But the fact is that did it fit my budget? And do I stick to it? And so when we did the cash thing, we used to have envelopes with money in it. When the cash was gone, you didn't buy any more groceries. You made do with what you had. Same thing for entertainment. You know, the envelope system works really well, especially for things along those lines. You know, things that you're gonna be buying and that you can use cash for, because of course we've got some instances where they don't want cash anymore. But, you know, going out, you know, you're going to go out to eat, or you're going to have, you know, date nights or whatever it is. You know, we put, I think it was $200, you know, for the month in there. And so when the $200 was gone, it was gone. So if we went out and went to Sullivan's and blew it all there, that was our monthly stipend, basically. And that's the problem with cards, right? You know, when you have a card, it's just stick it in there, right? And we can take care of it. Whereas if we do, and I started doing this again myself, whereas if we're carrying around cash, when the money's gone or starts to run low, there's a physical feeling with that, right? It's like, oh my goodness, you know, I had $300 in here, and I'm down to $40. What did I do with it? Whereas if I'm using the card, it's just stick it in there, right? As long as it keeps taking it, just keep sticking it in there. And then maybe every now and then we're like, I think I might be getting low. Let me jump online and take a peek at my balance. Oh, I got money. I'm good. And that's the bad thing about that compared to having a checkbook, you know, in the past too, where you had to actually see the balance all the time. Now we don't see it. So psychologically, we've got money. As long as that card keeps working, we've got money. And we don't see the balance going down. So, you know, it's like, those $400 worth of clothes, no big deal. I just got to sell another house. You know, I'll take care of it. So the discipline is where we talk about here, and maybe you have to get an accountability partner as well. Find somebody else. If you got a significant other, put it on the calendar that, hey, Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, we're going to sit down and we're just going to look at our expenses really quick. I don't care what day you pick it, but you just got to pick, one day to do that, and then go through things. And again, both sides have to agree when it's significant others, you have to agree that there's going to be no judgment, right? Oh my God, you went to Target and you spent $122. What'd you spend? We don't need that, right? Hey, the 122 that we spent at Target, was that within, that budget? Oh, sure was. Okay, great. I don't care what you bought, right? I really don't, as long as we stay within that budget. And that's the other part of it too, is that you have that, Dave Ramsey teaches this, is that you have your walking around money, if you want to call it that, number one, and then you have your slush fund. And so in that slush fund, you can spend whatever you want to spend, and the other person can't say anything about it. And so you just have to agree on those things. But it's a way to, again, put everything, compartmentalize that cash and put it into its appropriate cup. Because if we don't put that money into a cup, like I said, it just leaks away. And that goes for the investing side of this as well. If we need to save $20,000 in order to buy a property, well, we need to figure that out, right? All right. What's, 20,000 divided by 12 or by paycheck, I'm going to have 20 paychecks this year. Well, I need to save $1,000 in each paycheck. Is that possible? Well, no, it probably isn't. And so that's where like win, make, give, like to talk about that, is then how do you increase your cash? Again, number one, cut your expenses. Number two, maybe I need to find a second job. Maybe there's things at work I can do to earn bonuses. Whatever it is that you're looking at, then you need to look at all options, is what it comes down to. And how important is it for you to buy that property? If it's not that important, then it's not going to happen. And so that's one of the things that Brandon talked about yesterday is, having that 5-year plan. What does it look like a year from now? What does it look like 3 years from now? And what does it look like 5 years from now? And setting those benchmarks, because you know what, the first year it might be just saving money, and that's okay. It might be that the first year and a half might be just saving money to get that first one. And then you're going to have the plan of, all right, if I buy smartly and I can get some equity in that home when the first one that I buy, or if I'm doing a flip or whatever it might be, then I can pull some of that. I can pull 80% of that equity out to help me buy the next one. But you got to be patient, and you got to make sure you stay within your buy box. Because too many times when we start investing, we just go out and buy the first thing that we see, right? As a matter of fact, one of the things I've been seeing a lot of, I don't know if anybody else is noticing this when they're looking at the MLS, how many people have started a rehab and then either A, ran out of money or ran out of patience. They're starting to show up again for some reason. I don't know why. This happened back in like probably 2010, 2000 through like 2014. There was a lot of those homes that people were buying to flip. And then of course they got into them and it was too much work, or it ended up being more money than they thought it was going to be. And so you would see a lot of houses that had pulled all the drywall out, and you walked in them and the drywall was sitting on the floor, to put up, but they just didn't have the time or the patience to do it anymore. So you have to find then what it is that you want to do and how you want to invest. I'm not saying that real estate is the ultimate thing to do, because it may not be your thing, like I mentioned. But I will tell you that most millionaires, they have some sort of real estate in their portfolio. The reason why we don't invest in real estate is because we're afraid of it. We're afraid we're going to make a mistake. We're afraid that we're going to do the wrong thing, and we sit on the sidelines and we never pull the trigger. And I think every one of us has a story where we've looked at maybe buying something and then we didn't, and then we've been kicking ourselves in the butt ever since. If I only would have bought that piece of property here, or if I would have invested with my friends on this. And that's the other thing to remember too. is that once you start getting into this, if you don't have the cash, and Brandon's brought this up, Gene Rivers has talked about this. I'm trying to think of who else. Bring other people to the table, find the deal, and then bring it to the table. And so it may be that, I know Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki talks about this, is that he didn't have any cash, but he found the deal that worked for other people. So he said, I'll bring you in on this, but I get 20%. And so he was able to bring people in and he didn't put any money down on it. And he got 20% of the deal. People are willing to do that. People are willing to pay you basically a finder's fee for pulling them into the deal. So if you run across something, don't ever just go, oh, you know what? I don't have the money. I can't do it. Bring it up to somebody, bring it forward. We're real estate agents. So number one, we should be able to get a commission off of it. Right. And then number two, if we do it right, if we say it the right way, we can get some form of a payment out of it. I mean, and having your name on something, even at 10%, is better than nothing, right? Especially when you didn't have to put any money down. So don't pass up those deals, but you got to know what you're looking for. And again, kind of going backwards just a little bit, and that's where starting to save that money, at least you have something, right? And so it might be something where, everybody else has got that somebody else is coming in with 20,000, but you're bringing 5. It doesn't matter. You're in the deal. And so getting the first one a lot of times is the hardest one, but just get in the game. You hear people out there at this point too, they've got land that they want to sell. Don't balk at it, right? I mean, let's find a builder that may want to build on it. Let's find a developer. Let's find, whatever. Let's take that opportunity and grow that. I mean, that's really what you're looking to do in investments, is to grow it, right? And like Gary said too, is if you're looking all the time, this is Gary Keller now, if you're looking all the time, then you'll understand it better and you will know when a deal is coming along. But if you just jump on the MLS every now and then and go, let me see what houses are out there for sale. Oh my goodness, here's a house for 125,000 and all the other houses in the area are selling for 250. Well, number one, it's like out in the middle of nowhere. And the reason why it's 125,000 is because it was built in 1910. And, the termites have, basically eaten everything away from it. So it probably is even still overpriced at 125. So you have to know the areas that you're looking in as well. And that was one of the things that Gary has shared several times is find the areas that you want to invest in and then just really start to investigate it, drive the neighborhood. Like him and his wife would just go out and drive the neighborhoods that they were looking at, waiting for a for sale sign to come up or an opportunity maybe, where all of a sudden a commercial building where a business might have closed up in it, and getting the opportunity to buy the building, or seeing that the grass has gotten a little bit tall on a residential home that somebody may have abandoned, or maybe a family member has unfortunately passed away and the family doesn't have the money to keep it. There's opportunities out there for you if you're looking for them and if you've been educated to see it, because that's the problem. Is a lot of times as investors, as uneducated investors, we pass right by deals. And again, there are people out there, maybe you don't want to do flips. Then you go and you look at a home and you're like, yeah, this house needs to be flipped. Go take it to a flipper. Or you know what? Hey, you know what? I can bring this deal to you. How can we work together so I can learn how to do this as well? Or how do what kind of can I list the house after it's flipped? Things like that. I mean, there's all sorts of options. And so don't pass things by. But again, going back to the first part, I know Nikki was there yesterday as well, is, get that budget, figure out where your money's at, figure out where it's going, and then cut the expenses then as well. Go through it and figure it out. And again, I'll use Brandon's term as, what's your blueberry? And it's not just about food. Your blueberry could be anything. It could be that you buy a lot of shoes. Do you need to have all those shoes? Could be that you buy, some people like to buy t-shirts, hats. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. You just got to figure out, because we all have one. And do we really need to do that right now? And what's more important, that blueberry or investing that money and growing our wealth? So whether you've read the MREI, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Investor, book, that'd be a great one to pick up and look at right now. Going back and reading anything from Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant would be a great one. Win, Make, Give is a great podcast to listen to. I think it's Bigger Pockets is the other one that really deals with real estate. Now I know they may have a fee, I think, to get into some of their forums and things like that. But of course, the podcast itself is there for you to listen to. So again, my challenge for you this week is to really look at your finances. Again, pull out your credit card purchases, pull out your debit card purchases, and just really look at those things and make sure there isn't a lot of those reoccurring charges on there. And if there is a reoccurring charge, do you really need it? And like I said, I have a friend that back in the day, he had cut his cable, before it was cool to do that. And after a while, one of his sons came up to him and said, "How long do we have to be downgraded?" He wanted to upgrade again because they got rid of they just basically went to the basic channels, if you want to call it that. And again, do we need, like I said, I've got to really evaluate that myself. I mean, I've got Netflix, I've got, Amazon Prime, I've got Disney at this point. I think that's it. So I have to go back and I don't even know if maybe, my kids have signed up for something, or my ex had signed up for something that I don't need. So we need to go through that and make sure that we're not paying for things that we don't want. Because again, when we see it and it's $10 or $15, we blow it off. But they start adding up when you put them all together. Like I said, all that streaming stuff is going to be over $100. If I'm eating out every day, again, that's $20 a day. So go through and kind of, and I'd go back a couple, 2-3 months just to get a really good look at that, to see if there's a pattern that's in there. Oh my goodness, I'm spending a lot of time at Panera. Do I need to go to Panera that many times in a 3-month period? Or over the 3-month period, this is all the times that all the food that I have. That was one of the things that Brandon mentioned yesterday too. I mean, they don't like to cook. And so they did a lot of that themselves, but there's a lot of money that can be saved by looking at that. And again, are you still buying a newspaper? Do you need it? Do you have online subscriptions that you're not using? I know the last time that we started this wealth building, and we had a woman who went back and did that. She cut $600 out of her budget in 1 month. And that didn't include, I knew she ate out a lot too, and that didn't even include that. There was just a whole bunch of stuff that was in there that was on reoccurring stuff that they were paying for, her and her husband were paying for, that they hadn't used it in 2 or 3 years. I think I've mentioned this before too. If you want to really find out what's being charged on your credit card, call up your bank. You can do this with your debit card too, and just say, "Hey, I want to change my number for security purposes. I just want to change it. I don't want to cancel it. I just want to change it." And when they change that number, then when somebody comes in to try to do a reoccurring charge, of course, you're going to get a phone call. You're going to get an email. Something like that's going to happen where they're like, "Hey, we're not getting our $25. What happened? You need to give us some updated information." And don't give it to them. Keep it for yourself, right? Because again, 25 times 12, that's going to be what, 250. It'll be about $300. So That's a fair amount. And if you do that a couple of times, like I said, just like that, you've saved yourself $1,000 in a year. And now it starts adding up. Take that $1,000, put it into that investment account, and then add whatever else that you can from the month, and pretty soon you've got yourself a down payment on a house. But you got to be disciplined about it. And one of the things that Brandon mentioned yesterday too, before I forget, speaking of debit cards, if you have a business account, you don't want to have a debit card associated with that. And the reason why is because banks, if your card gets compromised or your account gets compromised, banks do not have to reimburse business accounts. So and he lost 20 grand. So this is a personal experience where he had a business account and had a debit card, and somebody got a hold of it, and they did some shopping in Germany, I think it was, and then they bought a bunch of toolboxes. And the total amount came up to 20,000, and he never got that money back. So again, great wealth building tip, because you don't want to go the opposite way either. You don't want to go backwards. So no debit cards to your business account. Debit cards for your personal account, okay, fine. Get a credit card for your business expenses, then you can just pay right out of that. You can just basically transfer money to pay that. But that was a big aha yesterday, because I hadn't heard that before, that business accounts are not protected by anything. So if they get hacked, you're, for lack of a better term, you're SOL. So take a look at that, make sure you got it. The other part of it is that it is good to separate your money and have a business account and to track it. Use the apps that are out there to track like your mileage and to track your expenses and things along those lines, so that when tax season comes around, it's easier to do that. And the second part about it is that you probably want to speak with your accountant quarterly to make sure that you're up to date on your taxes, so that you do not get a fine or a penalty for underpaying on your taxes. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Because I think that's where we're going to end it for today.
I have a question, Brian. This is Michelle.
Yeah, go ahead, Nikki.
I'm not quite sure if he mentioned the difference between a holding account, because he said a holding account, and he spoke about business accounts and personal accounts. But I took it as a holding account is not from a bank. Exactly where can you go and set up a holding account?
The holding account it's just basically another account. He's just saying that you should have an account that's holding like your money for your taxes, things like that. But it's just a savings account or a money market account. I would definitely do like an interest bearing account, since that money may sit there for a number of days before you use it. But what he's saying is to separate it, pull it out, because of course, again, going back to what we were talking about before with having the card, is that if you're anything like me, if I got money in my account, I'm spending it. Okay. Terrence is standing here and he's giving a big thumbs up as well. And so that's why he's saying, take that money out and put it into an account that you're like, I've got an account now. It's in my credit union back in Minnesota. I don't have a debit card for it, and I don't have a credit card attached to it. When I transfer money there, I tend to forget about it. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, so it is definitely another bank account, but it's not a bank account that you are frequenting. Like, you don't pull money out of it. It's just to hold money.
This gentleman here from Profit First, Mike, I can't even say his last name. I won't even attempt to say it. But he talks about that same thing, that you take your account and as a matter of fact, he says, don't even get a statement for it. Tell your bank you don't even want a statement for it. Now you have to remember it's there, and you probably need to tell somebody in case you get hit by the beer truck, so that people can go get the money. But the fact of the matter is to make it as difficult as possible for you to take your money out. And he recommends that you put your taxes there, or if you're trying to save money, things along those lines, is put it into that account. Now, Brian Pate was in here a couple years ago, and he's a big believer in this book. And he has an account in Winston-Salem. He put it up there. So when he needs to get money out, he has to drive basically 2 hours to get money to pay like his taxes, pay his taxes and things along those lines. Because he said the same thing. If I know I've got money, I'm going to spend it. Or if it's easy to get to, I'm going to spend it. So that's what the holding account is. And he talks about this in here. And just like Brandon did yesterday, and he talks about this as well, pay yourself first. Make sure every month that you're getting a check or you're getting a commission check, take some money off and make sure that you're paying yourself. And what I mean by that is take 10% and put it into a savings account, or into your investment account or wherever you want to put it. Not that you're paying yourself. You can pay yourself a salary once you get into those LLCs and things along those lines but then you got to pay payroll taxes. There's pluses and minuses for everything. And so there you just need to talk to your accountant, talk to your bookkeeper, about those things. But the big thing is just make sure and like The Richest Man in Babylon, if anybody's read that book as well, they talk about the same thing. Every time you get money, take 10% and put it to the side. So they talk about pieces of silver because that's what they were using back then. So for every 10 pieces of silver, you should set one aside. So you get a commission check, take 10%, set it over here. Then take your taxes and stuff out of that and set that into another account. You'll find that you end up having 3 or 4 accounts because you'll have your operating account or your checking account or your business account, whatever you want to call it, whatever you're paying your bills out of. You'll have a savings account, you'll have an investment account, and then you may have, and again, that tax account. Some people put this, the monies together, so that way, like the investment and the taxes, so that way they make sure they have enough in case they have a great year and all of a sudden they get bumped up into a tax bracket that's a little bit higher than what they thought. But if you're meeting quarterly with your accountant, you shouldn't have that issue. Taylor, you look so studious. I know you're doing something else, but. All right, any other questions? All right, well, I'll let you go, but that's the big thing here. Again, go get into your finances. That's the number one thing. And again, the Win, Make, Give podcast is going on right now. The Win, Make, Give, the 2.0, if you want to call it that. They're really short. They're only about a 25 to 30 minute podcast. And then they usually have some homework that's going along with it as well. And they're going to be going through the same thing. And, like I think the last one they did is they talked about doing the net worth. And I know in the last one, last Win, Make, Give, there is like a net worth spreadsheet that they have. They've got all sorts of spreadsheets that are there so that you don't have to make anything up. I believe they have a budget spreadsheet in there so that you can grab that and do that. But again, there's plenty of apps that are out there. If you just go online, somebody's usually got some type of a spreadsheet that's available. You can do it for free. You can write it down on a piece of paper. I don't care how you do it. But number one, figure your budget out. How much money do I need to live on a month? Because I'm telling you, the first time I did it, I was shocked at how much money we were spending. Because I'm like, well, man, we're both making decent money here. How come we don't have anything left over? And then when we went through it, we're like, holy smokes, right? And then the second part we did then is, of course, went in and started cutting some things like, hey, do you really need this? Do you really need that? And it's no fun. I'm not going to sit here and say it isn't, but in the long term, I'm glad we did, because it did allow us to do some things, and we got everything paid off, right? We paid off the cars, and the only thing we had was mortgage, so, and that feels good. It definitely felt good. So get in there, find that money. And that's the first thing. Let's get the debt paid off. And then He mentions it in this book. Everybody who does this now mentions this, is that we got to build up a cash reserve, right? You know, we need to have basically a 1 month operating. So what does it cost for me to do my business on the business side of it? And then have like 2 months in reserve. And if you remember, it was 2 months of personal money and then 1 month of basically operating. So 6 months worth of cash is what we need to have to make it real simple. And Dave Ramsey talks about that. You know, he talks about the baby steps, saving $1,000, then saving like 3 months. I think he talks about having 3 months worth of money aside, so that if something happened to you, if you got sick or you got hurt, that for 3 months you didn't have to work. Because how many of us can do that right now? I can't. I'm raising my hand, but I can't do it right now. I could at one time, but I can't right now. So I need to get back to that as well. Taylor, kind of maybe. Did you get that house under contract?
No, it's been a nightmare. The listing agent is absolutely delusional. He's also the seller. And we're like at a 90,000 gap because he is so overpriced. I've never seen a home so overpriced, but I think he's in the hole on his new home that he's building next door. And that's why he won't go any lower.
Well, that's what she expected.
It's there anyway, right? The offer's there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Excuse me. $90,000 is a lot though.
It is, but I've also I've pulled comps over and over, and he refuses to.
Has he shown you his?
No, he won't send them to me because I don't think he's used any.
Oh,
Yeah,
you've asked for him though, right?
3 times. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all you can do. I would, go back to your clients and say, we probably just should move on from this.
Yep, we are.
Yeah. All right, ladies, thanks for being here today. Appreciate you. And I think we're doing this every other week, right? I believe that's what we went to now. Let me see. We got it. Do we have it next week? Nope. So the next time we'll be here is on the 1st. We'll do it back. We'll do it then. But again, go look at you got a couple of weeks here. Don't put it off, but go look at your expenses and figure out where you can, what you can do, where your money's going, and then set up a budget along with it. And be realistic with it. I mean, like I said, I can't remember what we were spending in groceries at the time. It was something ridiculous. And then once we, got a budget to it, we really stuck to it, and we saved a lot of money, based on, and we only went shopping once a week. That was the other thing too. Because when you're making those runs, that's where you tend to pick up, like I said, you're walking, oh, I'll take that. No, I'll take that. Oh, that looks good. And it's just human nature, right? Well, as long as I'm here. So we buy a lot of extra stuff that we don't need, but we only went shopping once a week. And when the money was out, we didn't buy anything else.
And never go food shopping when you're hungry.
Don't do that. My goodness, I get this cough. Can't wait for that to go away. All right. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.